A warm welcome to you. Today we're going to chat about various systems for wagering on roulette. We're going to use high-speed computer simulations to help us understand how they affect our bankroll and what kind of fluctuations we might expect with regard to these simulations. So basically with these simulations, all of the sims I'm going to do are going to comprise between 100,000 and a million sessions. Well, let's go ahead and take a look at our first betting system, and this is going to be a simple betting system. We're going to flat bet. That means we're going to make the same bet over and over and over again on any of the one-to-one wagers in roulette. One-to-one wagers would be something like red or black, 1 through 18 or 19 through 36, odd or even. And please don't forget that 0 and double zero do not count as even in roulette. So our steps are we're just going to repeat that same bet amount, that flat bet, on any one-to-one wager. Well, let's take a look at what this might look like. Here we see a roulette wheel, and you can see here at the bottom that this is just playing for fun on this online site, and I will put the site in the description. Currently, I have $4,998, and I'm just going to go ahead and make a wager on one of these one-paying bets. So let's say I choose even. And I'm going to go bet. Let's see what happens.
The winning number is 29 black.
29, so I lost that particular bet. And whether I win or lose, I'm just going to keep betting that 1 unit on any of these even money bets. That's what's happening in this particular system. So what I did is I went ahead and wrote a computer software to make this wager. Starting bankroll prescribed, let's say, of 1,000 units. And then the software just continues to play the game until either reaching the goal or until losing the entire bankroll. So let's see these results quickly here. And this is going to require some description, but I just wanted you to see this is typical of what you would see in this particular system. So the starting bankroll is here, 1,000 units. There's actually 5 different sessions shown here, and each session is a color. So this yellow session would be what happened to your bankroll of 1,000 units until you either reach 2,000, and you can see in this particular system we never do reach 2,000, until you go all the way down to 0. So in the green session, same betting system, we lost all of our money earlier than in the yellow session. And you might be asking yourself, well, what is this slope in this system? And where am I likely to lose my money? Well, if you recall from a previous video, the house advantage in double zero roulette, and everything we're looking at today is double zero. The house advantage in double zero roulette is 1 over 19, or 5.26%. So if I'm wagering 1 unit on a system, doesn't matter, but I'm wagering 1 unit each time, let's say on this particular system, let's say on red, then I expect to lose 1/19th of a unit per spin. And so for me to lose 1,000 units would take about 19,000 spins. And if you look carefully at this axis down here, you will see that 19,000 is right about here where I have my cursor. And so this slope here is just the house advantage. The other thing to notice from these graphs is they're all about the same. They all kind of fall down in a straight line. If we were to take a close-up of just one of these sessions early on, just to make sure that the software is working correctly. When you write software and you write a simulation and you expect the simulation to play out millions, if not hundreds of millions of spins, you want to make sure it's working correctly. So here we can see the beginning of one of the sessions. So I start with 1,000 units. I happen to have won the first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I won my first 5 spins, so I'm up to 1,005 is my bankroll. Then I lost 1, 2, 3. Then I won 1, 2. Then I lost 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on and so forth. Win, loss, win, loss, win. And this would continue. This is a blow up of one of those areas. And at the end, you get what we just looked at, these curves here. So essentially, the upshot here of this flat betting 1-to-1 is it's very low volatility. You can see that these curves are kind of on a line. They're going to intersect here at around 19,000 spins because I'm losing about 1/19 of a unit each spin. So that would be a flat bet that pays 1-to-1. Let's look next at a flat betting system where again I'm going to just repeat the same bet amount. That's a flat bet. But now I'm going to increase my volatility. I'm going to put that bet on a single number. It can be 1, it can be 7, it can be your favorite number. That number pays 35-to-1. Running the sim, we see these results. Again, these are just 5 representative sessions. You can see here that 1,000 is where these start. And you can see in each case here, the fluctuations are substantially higher than they were with the even money wager, like the red wager. You can see here in this particular case, this orangey brown session, the fellow was actually up to 1,800 units. So he was ahead. If each unit was $1 and he started with 1,000, this guy was up to $1,800, but eventually lost it all back. So 35-to-1, you would expect to be more volatile because now you're either going to lose 1 unit or win 35 units. And you can see that volatility here in terms of the bankroll for the system when you simulate it. Again, let's look at a close-up early on just to make sure that we understand what the code is doing. So what the code is doing here, this particular player, for example, started at 1,000. He lost the first 1, 2, 3, 4 spins. But then from his perspective, something wonderful happened on the 5th spin. He gained 35 units. So he went from 996 all the way up to 1,031. But then you see he had a long string of loss after loss after loss after loss after loss, all the way back down to, looks like 994 units before he won the next one. So you get a bit of this sawtooth type pattern, and it's clearly more volatile where I'm going to either lose 1 unit or gain a big amount of units. And I have a small chance of winning a big amount. You can see that there's quite a bit of successive losses I might see in between. So looking back again at this, you can see that it has increased our volatility. Our fluctuations in our bankroll are significantly greater than they were with a wager on an even money outcome. You can see that, for example, that might get us to a situation where occasionally we might double our bankroll before losing it all. But nevertheless, there is still a house advantage, and that house advantage is not surmountable with a fair roulette wheel. Let's look at the next system here. And the next system is what we call the Romanoski system. I have discussed the Romanoski system in prior videos, and it's a system where I'm trying to bet 3 wagers on any 2 of the dozens, and then I wager 1 unit on 2 independent corners in the 3rd dozen. And let's take a look at what that would look like. So I'm basically going to wager 3 units here, 1, 2, 3 units on the first dozen. I can pick any 2 of the 3 dozens. Let me just pick the easy ones right here. 3 units here. And then in this last dozen, I need to pick 2 corners that don't overlap. So for example, I can pick this corner and I can pick, for example, this corner. So if you look at what I have covered right now in terms of my wagers, there's a lot that's covered. I have the first dozen covered here. I have the second dozen covered. Over here, I've got these 4 numbers covered and these 4 numbers covered. So I have 24 plus 8, 32 numbers covered, and I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 that are not covered. Now let's see how we do. 89 right now, and we're wagering 8 units.
The winning number is 16 red.
So in the Romanovsky system, if you win, you will always gain 1 unit. So you always wager 8, 3, 3, 1, 1. And if you hit any of the numbers that you've covered, you will win 9 units for the cost, if you will, of 8 units. It's a net of 1 unit. However, if you lose, you're going to lose all 8 units that you've wagered, obviously. And so that is the Romanovsky system. Continuing now, let's look at these Romanovsky results. And the Romanovsky system, although somewhat popular, and certainly there are a number of YouTube videos espousing it. You can see it does not fare very well. And in fact, it does not have a lot of volatility either. The volatility, in other words, these are mostly look like lines. These are 5 sessions again, and they mostly look like lines. So it's not too dissimilar from the original red or black. And again, we should take a close-up of this just to make sure we understand what's happening in terms of the spin-to-spin outcome. And as we talked about, Romanosky is a wager of 8 units. And if you hit your number, you will gain 1 unit. So it's essentially a gain of 1 unit, as you see here on the first spin, or a loss of 8. Gain of 1, loss of 8. Gain of 1, next spin, gain of 1, another loss of 8. Then you see a succession of wins. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. And so you may have a long string or succession of small wins. But when you lose, you're going to lose 8 units a pop in Romanovsky. So at the end of the day, what you see is that, again, it's not a system that can overcome the house advantage in roulette. No system can overcome a fair wheel with a mathematical house advantage in roulette. In double zero roulette, the house advantage is 5.26%. You can't overcome that. The last system I wanted to look at is called the Martingale System. And the Martingale System is actually pretty simple. It's a wagering system. So we're not going to flat bet anymore. We're not going to make the same bet every time in terms of how much we bet. We're going to start with a wager of 1 unit. And we're going to bet on a 1-to-1 bet like red or even or odd, 1 through 18, something like that. If we win, we just start over. We go back to step 1 and wager 1 unit on a 1-to-1 bet. If we lose, we're going to double up every time. So let's take a look at what that might look like here. We're going to go ahead and clear the board here, and I'm going to wager 1 unit on, let's say I wager on red. Let's see what happens in our Martingale.
The winning number is 19 red.
Okay, I got red, so I won 2 units for the one that I won a net of 1 unit. Let's put it that way. So I bet 1, and in their way of on this particular website, their way of portraying things, my win is 2 for the original bet of 1, which is now gone. And my net is 1 unit. So in the Martingale system, if I win, I just play 1-to-1 again. And I don't have to stay with red. I can switch it up to black, let's say, if I want to. Doesn't really matter. I can choose any of the wagers. I would again bet 1. See what happens here?
The winning number is 3 red.
3 red. So in this case, I lost the wager. And so Martingale would say, okay, now I've got to bet 2 units. So let's say I put it on even at 2 units. I'm going to wager again. So now I've got 2 riding instead of the 1. The idea in the Martingale is anytime I finally
The winning
win,
number is 31 black.
I lost again. So now I've got to wager 4 units. Let's go ahead and put the 4 here. The idea in Martingale is anytime you finally win, you will have recouped all the losses you had prior to that.
The winning
will
number
have
is
gained
5
1
red.
So here now I've lost 3 in a row, so I've got to double this up again to $8. And this is the way Martingale goes. Sometimes it can get really nerve-wracking because you've got to double your wager every time and you're chasing a win of only $1.
The winning number is 9 red.
So I've lost again. So now I've got to up my bet to $16. Again, I'm trying to chase that $1 win. And if I get even, I will win it all back, plus $1. If I don't get even,
The winning number
double
is
for the system.
7 red.
Now I'm up to 16. So now I've got to go all the way to $32. Root for even.
The winning number is 14 red.
So I finally got my even, and I got $64 for the 32 wager. So I netted on that particular bet $32. It's a 1-to-1 paying bet. But prior to that, I had lost bets of 1, 2, 4, 8, and 16. And if you add up 1, 2, 4, 8, and 16, you'll find that that's 31. So for this entire sequence, I've won $1. All right, so that's the way the martingale works. Let's look at its results. So the martingale looks a little bit different, and I'm going to remove myself here so that we can look at this more carefully. And you can see that these results are quite different than what we have seen before. And I think that's part of what makes the martingale more popular. It's part of what might make it interesting. Now, let me point out right up front, the martingale system does not make money for you. It is not a system that will beat roulette. The house advantage in roulette will continue to provide the house with a certain price point, a certain amount they expect to win with each spin. But what you see here is that there are instances now, finally, this is a starting bankroll of 1,000 units here. And there are, right here is 1,000. And there are instances where you can see that it does reach $2,000. There are also instances where it looks like something's happening here, where this line drops pretty quickly down to 0. You can see here was another total loss. And here in purple is another total loss. But there were 2 instances, yellow and green, where it reached the 2,000. And as we did before, let's take a closer look and make sure we understand what's happening in this system on a spin-by-spin basis. So on a spin-by-spin basis here, you can see that, for example, we start with 1,000, and if the first spin is a win, then we're at 1,001. We're going to go ahead and wager $1 again, and we won again. We're at 1,002, 1,003, 1,004, 1,005. So this was 5 straight wins. On the other hand, this next win was a loss, and we dropped to 1,004. And after a loss, we double our wager, so we should now bet $2. This happened to lose again, so now it's at 1,002. Now we've got to wager $4. This lost again, so now it was at 998. After every loss, we double up, so now we're going to wager 8. And after that, we got a win, so we went from 998 all the way up to 1,006. And what you can see is, when we started this dip, we were at 1,005. After the whole dip, and when we finally got a win in Martingale, we net 1 unit. So we went from 1,005 through the dip to 1,006. You can follow for yourself this next dip where we lost 1, then 2, then 4, then 8, then we lost 16. We had to wager 32 on this spin to get back up, and we finally won. But again, we started into the dip at 1,007 in terms of our bankroll, went all the way down to 976 and then bumped back to 1,008, so that we gained 1 unit when we finally won. And that's the way Martingale goes. And these dips can get pretty deep, and that's why the curves of what happens to you in Martingale look like this. And let me remove myself again so it's easier to see what's happening here. But provided each of these dips is a situation where we lost money and we had to double up and double that, and double that, and double that, and double that, until we finally won and went all the way back up to this trajectory that we're kind of on here of winning 1 unit per spin. That's kind of this trajectory. On the other hand, occasionally I will encounter a catastrophic loss, 1 unit, then 2 units, 4, 8, 16, 32. You know, it keeps going, 64, 128, 256, 512, 1024, and I'm bust. And because I've had a number of successive losses, there's no way to insulate yourself from that. It will eventually happen. Sometimes you can recover, like for example, on this green session, you see there was a rather catastrophic loss here where this particular session was, let's say the bankroll was around 1,300 units, and then suffered a major loss of about 900 units. And it was not able at this point to wager what it wanted to. So in my code simulation, I just have it wager what it has left in terms of the bankroll. So it would have wagered around 400 units here. It apparently won that one. It was back up around 700 or 800 and grew from there. Again, there are these losses, but it recovers most of the time. This particular green one went all the way back to 2000, and so it was able to double the bankroll, which was the goal. On the other hand, if you look at this purple one, it sustained some rather sizable losses, kept kind of inching back forward, was up here maybe at around 1,800 units, almost to 2,000. You would think it would make it. No, but lost everything. Just a matter of a few spins because you're doubling your bet every time. And so it goes quickly from 4 to 8 to 16 to 32 to 64 to 128. And before you know it, all of your bankroll can be wiped out in the Martingale. Well, let's go ahead and summarize what we've learned here with the sim results and the computer kind of telling us what's likely to happen to our bankroll with these various systems. What I've been showing you with the graphs is really this 1,000 to 2,000 line here. That is what I've been showing you in the graphs. But I decided to run a few other simulations as well, just because I think that they're interesting. You can see here that flat betting is low volatility, and the Romanoski system is relatively low volatility, and really none of these really ever work. They might give you a certain string of wins, and you might feel good about that. But in terms of the bankroll and the goal for these kinds of goals, where you're either trying to double your bankroll or you're trying to increase your bankroll by 50%, they don't do much. The flat bet at 35 to 1 gives you a lot of additional volatility. And it's this volatility that might get you to propel yourself kind of above the the additional volatility because you're winning 35 times your bet. If you string together a couple of those close together, you might be able to overcome and double your bankroll before you lose it. But remember, the house advantage is still there. It's not a winning system. Just because you're able to double occasionally before you lose it all does not mean it's a winning system. For example, let's look at this together. If I start with 100 units and my goal is to get to 200 units, this system here says I have about a 40% chance of doing that. What that means is I have about a 60% chance of losing all of my bankroll. So is it worth it to you to have a 40% chance of gaining 100 units at the risk of a 60% chance of losing the 100 units? It's clearly not a winning system. And the same thing is true here. If my goal is to just take 100 to 150, I might have a 56% chance of doing that, but that means I have a 44% chance of losing the entire 100. And lastly, the Martingale, which obviously is again also a volatile system. The volatility in Martingale is not because I'm making 35 to 1 wagers like I am in this system here. It's because I'm fluctuating the amount of the wager. And you can see that Martingale occasionally does win. It occasionally succeeds in doubling your bankroll or increasing your bankroll by 50% before you lose it all. But it never overcomes the house advantage. In other words, if it were able to overcome the house advantage, your chance of getting from 100 to 200 should be 50% or more. If you should have a 50% chance of gaining 100 if you have a 50% chance of losing 100. That would be a fair system. That's not true here. These numbers are below 50% up here where I'm trying to double the bankroll. Down here, the bottom 3 rows, I'm not trying to double the bankroll. I'm only trying to increase it by 50%. So in that case, a fair system, if it could overcome the house advantage, I would expect these numbers here to be about 2/3. In other words, if 2/3 of the time I gain half, that's the same as 1/3 of the time I lose everything. 2/3 times a half is 1/3. Same as 1/3 chance of losing everything, which is 1/3. But again, none of these approach that 67%. So in summary, there are systems that can manipulate your chance of winning. For example, Romanoski, you have a large chance of winning a small amount, but you still have a small chance of losing a large amount. You cannot overcome the house advantage. In the Martingale, you're chasing losses to try to always get a 1-unit win at the end of a particular dip when you finally win. After every win, you're up 1 unit in Martingale. But you will necessarily eventually encounter a series of losses from which you cannot recover, and it will wipe out your bankroll. With Martingale, there is a chance that if with specific goals, like if you want to double your bankroll or you want to increase your bankroll by 50%, you might be able to get there before your bankroll is wiped out. And you can see that in this final column here. However, it does not overcome the house advantage. The house, in the long run, with Martingale, will make money off of you, and you will lose money. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video. I enjoyed making it, coding it, simming the results, and reviewing them with you. If you have any comments or questions, please leave them below. If you enjoyed the video, please consider subscribing, and I will talk to you again soon. Take care.